My husband's face was sunlit and smug on my phone screen when the nurse tightened the blood pressure cuff around my arm. He was barefoot on a boardwalk, one hand on the small of a woman's back, the other lifting a plastic cup with a paper umbrella. The caption read, "Unexpected beach day. You only live once." The timestamp was 11:42 a.m., the same time I was supposed to be wheeled into pre-op. I felt the humiliation hit first, hot and sharp, like iodine on an open cut. Then training took over. I lifted my phone, tapped the three dots, saved the story before it vanished, and opened a folder I keep for important paperwork. I added the screenshots next to my surgery schedule, the surgeon's letter, and the signed pre-authorization form with my husband's signature as my emergency contact. I drafted an email with the subject line, "Urgent, attendance plus conduct," attached the photos, and addressed it to his boss, HR, and his project client. In the body, I wrote 2 clean sentences and included my hospital wristband photo for context. I hit send, turned the screen face down, and when the nurse asked if I needed to call my spouse, I said, "No, thank you," and smiled as if I were not burning. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for being part of this incredible journey. If you're enjoying these stories of empowerment, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us build this amazing community. Let's dive in. My name is Elena Morales. I am 34. I live in a small, neat house on a corner lot with crepe myrtles that drop pink tissue blossoms every June. And I love order because order kept me alive the year both my parents got sick. I am a clinic coordinator at a women's health center. My desk is a calm island in a sea of insurance calls and delayed lab reports. I label everything. I color code calendars. I keep a blue binder at home for mortgage, utilities, warranties, and health. The first page is a laminated checklist that starts with smoke alarm batteries in January and ends with gutter cleaning in December. I do not yell when things go wrong. I do paperwork. I file. I set alerts on my phone. I know, better than most, the difference between chaos and a plan. I married Daniel after 3 years of dating, a man with an easy laugh and good hair who said he loved that I handled life. He works in corporate partnerships for a sports apparel company, the kind that releases weekly drops and fuels office bragging rights. He makes decks with logos. He courts clients at games. He orders oysters to impress people. And he keeps his shirts in garment bags, as if the plastic could guard him from bad decisions. The surgery was not cosmetic. I had a uterine polyp that caused pain and bleeding and had to come out. The doctor called it simple. The nurse called it routine. I called it something I needed to do so I could sleep through the night without waking in a damp panic. I booked it for a Friday at 11:45 a.m. because Daniel said Friday mornings were easiest for him to step away. He would drive me, wait, take me home, pick up the heating pad he swore we owned, and make soup. He promised. He looked me in the eye and said, "I'm there." The morning of the surgery, he kissed my forehead and said he had to swing by the office to pick up a file for a Monday presentation. He would meet me at the hospital by 10:45 a.m. He left wearing the blue polo with his company logo and a watch I gave him for our anniversary. He smelled like cedarwood and sugar gum. I watched the taillights disappear and told myself to be grateful for a partner who showed up. At 9:27 a.m., I texted him a reminder. Bring the insurance card and the comfy blanket from the couch. At 9:39 a.m., the 3 dots appeared. Typing, pause, typing, and then nothing. At 10:12 a.m., I texted again. Everything okay? At 10:31 a.m., the hospital bracelet clicked onto my wrist. At 10:44 a.m., the nurse asked if my escort was on the way. I said yes, because hope dies in slow stages. At 11:02 a.m., my phone pinged with a notification I never turned off. Activity from an account I follow because I love their travel photography. A beach resort 2 hours south had posted new stories and tagged his company's client. I tapped. The view opened to a bright deck, string lights, and the words, "Client Friday, toes in sand, drinks on Dan." The camera panned, and there he was. He wasn't holding a file. He wasn't crossing a parking garage. He was laughing with a brunette in a white wrap dress. He had tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. He was not mine in that moment. He belonged to the afternoon, to the salt in the air, to the lie. There is a way your stomach drops when your life contradicts your calendar. It slid right out from under me like slate. I remembered the time my mother's biopsy results came in, and the nurse said, "Do you have someone with you?" There is a thin wire inside that either snaps or holds. Mine held, but it hummed. My hands didn't shake. My mind went room to room, clicking off lights. I saved the stories. I opened the camera and took a photo of my wristband, the bandage from the pre-op blood draw, and the NPO after midnight sign on my chart. I opened the email app and typed the names I have only heard at dinner. The boss, Daniel Reveres, the HR rep who sent the polite reminder about professional conduct last holiday party, and the client who signed the account that kept Daniel on bonus track. I do not like to write in anger, but there is a difference between rage and record. I wrote as if filing a report. "Hello. I'm reaching out for transparency. I'm Elena, Daniel's spouse. I'm writing from Mercy Women's Center, where I'm scheduled for surgery today at 11:45 a.m. Daniel signed as my emergency contact and committed to escort and post-op care. I understand he is at the Shoreline event with client. The attached images reflect the timing. Given the nature of his role and company policies, I thought you should be aware. Thank you." I attached the story screenshots, my wristband photo, and the surgeon's letter with the date circled. Then I hit send and put the phone face down, because I have learned that looking at a snake does not stop it from being a snake. At 11:20 a.m., Daniel texted, "Running late." Don't be mad. A minute later, he added a heart emoji. At 11:24 a.m., my phone rang with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail because a new calm had settled over me. A nurse named Farah squeezed my shoulder and said, "You're brave." I wanted to say, "No, I'm meticulous." But bravery and meticulousness sometimes ride in the same car. They wheeled me in at 11:47 a.m. The lights were clean and cold. The anesthesiologist asked me to count backwards from 10. My last thought was not about Daniel or a beach. It was about my binder at home, the unopened tab labeled "if needed." When I woke, it was afternoon. My throat was dry, my belly a dull ache that felt like a pulled muscle in a place I could not flex. Farah brought ice chips and a measured expression. "Your husband isn't here," she said, "so I called your emergency backup." My backup was my neighbor, a retired librarian named June, who always returns casserole dishes washed and lined with parchment paper. June appeared like a small, steady boat. She took my hand and said, "Let's get you home." At 3:10 p.m., my phone held a scroll of missed calls and 3 messages. From Daniel. "OMG, I am so sorry. Everything ran long. I am on my way. Please don't make a scene." From his boss, formal and clipped, "We received your email. We'll follow up from the client's assistant. Apologies. We were misinformed about his availability. Wishing you a swift recovery." June drove. I watched the guardrail pass in silver bars and thought about vows. On the kitchen counter, I set the discharge notes and medications and the paper bag with a snug ice pack. June adjusted the pillows and put a glass of water on the coaster I always use. She wrote times on a sticky note when I had to take pills. Her handwriting was neat. "Do you want me to stay?" she asked. "I'll be fine," I said, which was true in the way that being alone can be fine when you are done being lied to. At 4:06 p.m., Daniel's key hit the lock. He came in loud, as if volume could cover absence. He smelled like sunscreen and fairy diesel. He had removed the polo and wore a fresh t-shirt that said, "Locals Only," in a font designed to be ironic. He looked at the ice pack, my face, the pile of discharge papers, and exhaled the long sigh he uses to reset a sales pitch. "I should explain," he began. "You should apologize," I said. "Then you should get the gauze pads from the bathroom, the big ones, top drawer." His mouth opened and shut. "You're mad," he said, as if naming weather. "There was a client." "It was a last-minute thing. My boss said it was important." "You told me you would be here," I said. "You told the nurse you would be here. You signed the form." "I know," he said, "but this is my job. It's a big account." My phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it like it was a hot stove. He did not ask who it was. He walked to the sink and filled a glass he did not use a coaster for. He gulped. "You know how it is with clients," he said. "They expect you to be available." But I made it back. I'm here now. "Your boss responded to my email," I said, and watched his face falter a fraction. "You what?" he asked, tone cracking. "I told them where you were while I went under anesthesia," I said. "I attached photos." He set the glass down too hard and it chimed on the counter. "Elena, you sent them pictures?" He moved from shock to heat in a smooth slide. "That's a violation. You made me look bad." "You made you look bad," I said. "I recorded it." He laughed once, harsh and short. "You always do this," he said. "You make lists. You collect files. You treat life like a courtroom. It isn't healthy. People mess up. You don't blow up their whole job over one event." "Is it one event?" I asked. "Or is it a pattern?" The woman in white, her hand on his chest, flashed behind my eyes like a lens flare. He looked away first. "You think you know everything," he said, "because you keep every receipt." June, who had been in the living room pretending to be invisible, cleared her throat and stood. "Elena, I'll check in later," she said to me only. She touched my shoulder, a feather-light thing, and left through the side door. The room felt larger without her quiet, but also emptier. He watched the door swing shut and said, "Do you have to involve other people?" "I had to involve someone because you didn't come," I said. "It's done." He put his hands on the counter and leaned in. "We can fix this," he said. "I'll talk to my boss. I'll tell him you were emotional. Surgery makes people emotional. He'll understand." "No," I said, and heard how steady it was. He blinked. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, we won't lie to cover your lie," I said. "You choose your words. You own them." He took a breath, then another, like an athlete pacing himself in a race he did not train for. "Fine," he said. "I'll say it was a misunderstanding. I thought you didn't need me anymore because your neighbor was there." "She was there because the nurse called her when you didn't," I said. "Do you want to see the discharge notes?" His eyes skittered off the papers like they were soaked in bleach. "I need a shower," he said. "We can talk later." "Of course," I said. "There's soup in the fridge. I'll heat it for myself. You can order oysters if you want the full experience." He flinched then, a tiny thing, but I saw it land. He went down the hall and there was a thud as he shut the bathroom door. I sat and folded the discharge papers, aligning the edges until they were perfect. That night, I did not sleep much. I have learned that sleep skips houses with questions in them. At 2:13 a.m., I opened a new note and wrote what I knew, and under what I know, I wrote times. Under what I don't know, I wrote names. Under what I will do, I wrote steps. There were 6 steps. Step 1 was rest. Step 2 was gather. Step 3 was ask. Step 4 was decide. Step 5 was act. Step 6 was heal. I fell asleep in half sentences, and woke with the note still glowing soft on the nightstand. The next morning, I brewed coffee because coffee means the clock has started. Daniel came out in gym shorts, hair damp from a second shower. He was all soft apologies, as if reheated overnight. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have left you. It was stupid. Let me make it up to you. Brunch? Flowers?" He held up his hands like peace flags. "Sit," I said, and motioned to the table. "We're going to talk." He sat. I placed my binder on the table and opened it to the health tab. I slid across the copy of the pre-op checklist with his signature. "Do you remember signing this?" I asked. He nodded. Slow. "Yes." I flipped to the phone bill printout. "And this?" I asked, pointing to a cluster of calls to a number I didn't recognize. "You called this number 6 times yesterday morning. You deleted the call log on your phone last night, but the provider keeps records." He stared at the bill, then at me. "You went through my phone," he said. "I matched the timestamps," I said. "I am trying to understand." He exhaled through his nose, sharp. "It's a client's assistant," he said. "She coordinates." "Coordinates beach dates?" I asked. "Does she coordinate by tucking hair behind ears?" His jaw tightened. "You saved the videos," he said. "Of course you did." "I did," I said, "and I will delete them when we are finished." He leaned back, arms folded. "Okay," he said. "Fine. I had a drink with a colleague. It was work. It doesn't mean anything. She's just fun. You can be intense." There it was. The old pivot. Make the woman who scheduled her own surgery the problem. I let the pivot sit on the table and did not touch it. "I am going to ask you simple questions," I said. "Please answer them." "How long have you known her?" "A while," he said, shrugging. "How long have you been meeting like yesterday?" I asked. Silence is a language. He spoke it fluently. "I need to know what I am deciding," I said. "If this is your job, then your job requires lies. If this is your heart, then your heart is on a guest pass." He rubbed his face. "You're being dramatic," he said. "It was a beach drink." "It was 30 miles away and it replaced your promise," I said. "Let's not rename it." He pushed his chair back, hard. "I can't do this right now," he said. "I'm late." "For what?" I asked. "The shower after the shower?" "The office," he said. "My boss asked me to come in. We're discussing expectations. Because of your email." "My email did not create expectations," I said. "It revealed them." He shook his head and grabbed his keys. "I'll smooth it over," he said. "Don't make anything worse." The door shut. The house gulped like a fish. I sat there until the coffee cooled and a ring of oil pooled on top. Then I stood and cleaned it up because I clean on instinct, but my hands shook, and when hands shake, I do not trust them with glass. So I carried my binder to the living room, opened the "If Needed" tab, and pulled a folder I labeled Exit. The folder was not a plan to leave. It was a plan to stand up. Copies of my pay stubs. The deed to the house, with both our names, but the note about my down payment from before we married. The savings account I kept in my name because my mother once told me, "Always have a drawer that is yours." At 10:03 a.m., his boss called me. This time, I answered. His voice was different from dinner party voice. This one had a grindstone inside it. "Thank you for your email," he said. "I am sorry you had to go through your procedure without support." "Thank you," I said. "We're looking into this," he said, the corporate way of saying both "we know" and "we wish we didn't." "Is there any more context you want to provide?" "I don't want to get him fired," I said, and meant it. I don't root for joblessness. I want the truth told in the room where it matters. "It matters here," he said. "We have policies for a reason. He is on his way in to talk. If you prefer not to be involved further, I understand. I prefer fairness, I said. That is the goal, he said, and I heard a weariness that said he had chased fairness across rooms like a cat chases a laser dot. When I hung up, I felt both lighter and rawer, like skin after tape is pulled. I gathered laundry because laundry is a task with a scoreboard. Wash, dry, fold, done. It was when I slid open Daniel's sock drawer that I saw the hotel keycard. It was bland and beige, with the resort logo. He wasn't sloppy. He was tired from being careful. That's when people make mistakes. I set the key card on the dresser and took a photo of it next to a ruler with inch marks because I am that person, the one who can testify. I left it where it was, a breadcrumb he could notice and wonder about. Not to taunt. To cure myself of the idea that I imagined anything. By noon, my phone had 3 texts from mutual friends asking, "Are you okay?" And, "Daniel posted a beach boomerang yesterday. LOL. Did you guys go?" Humor is a blanket people throw on things so they don't have to see the shape underneath. I replied, "I'm recovering well, thank you." To the ones who would bring soup. To the ones who would bring gossip, I did not reply. At 1:28 p.m., Daniel texted, "Boss is mad. HR looped. You made a huge deal out of nothing. Expect me to be home late?" At 2:04 p.m., he added, "She told them you harassed her." Nice. I set the phone down because I do not do well when words enter the room uninvited and loud. I wrote a new list called Now. It had 3 items: rest, document, refuse cruelty. Rest meant ice and tea and television you don't have to follow. Document meant save, print, and store. Refuse cruelty meant no arguments where both people bleed. I dozed and dreamed I was on a train that never reached a station, only passed platform after platform where people waved and did not see me. When I woke at dusk, the room was a soft gray bowl. June knocked and entered, carrying 3 small containers and bread wrapped in a towel. She set them down and asked nothing. We ate at the counter the way you do with people who know that talking helps, and silence also helps. "How many days until your follow-up?" she asked. 10, I said. 10 days is a long time to be kind to yourself, she said, like instructions. At 6:52 p.m., Daniel texted, "We need to talk rules." At 7:13 p.m., "I'm grabbing a drink with a coworker to decompress." At 7:45 p.m., a single heart emoji and then nothing. I made myself a nest on the couch, arranged the remote and the tissue and the book I was pretending to read. Then the doorbell rang. I stood slowly. 2 people were on the porch, a man and a woman in office clothes. The woman wore a badge on a lanyard. "Hi," she said. "I'm Maya from HR. This is Paul, our compliance officer. Is now a bad time?" My brain threw sparks. "Daniel isn't here," I said. "We're aware," Maya said. "We're not here to interrogate. We wanted to make sure you're safe and to ask to confirm a couple of details. If it's too much, we can leave a card." I looked at June, who raised an eyebrow that said, "Your call." I looked at my couch nest and felt tired all the way into my bones. "Come in," I said, "but I'm sitting." We sat at the table. Maya's voice was careful. "We received emails from both of you. The timelines don't match. We're obligated to review because the client is involved. Did Daniel accompany you to the hospital?" "No," I said. "Do you have proof of your appointment and time?" she asked. I slid the folder across. She scanned and nodded. "Do you have the images you referenced?" she asked. I opened my laptop and placed it where she could see. The clips played in sequence, silent but damning. Paul's mouth made a straight line. "And this is the same day and time?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "The timestamp is in the corner." And the resort tagged the event. You can cross-reference. Thank you, Maya said. We're sorry to disturb you. We will handle the rest. I felt a swell of both relief and dread. Relief that I could set down the weight of other people's truth. Dread for what picking it up would mean for Daniel. I don't want him destroyed, I said, because saying it made it real. I want to change. Maya's eyes were kind. We try to align consequences with choices, she said. After they left, the house went even quieter. June squeezed my hand. You didn't set this in motion, she said. You named what already was. At 9:11 p.m., Daniel came home smelling like a bar that sold overpriced hope. His eyes were bright with anger. You brought HR to our house? He asked. They came to check on me, I said. I did not invite a party. You showed them everything, he said, daring me to deny. I showed them what they asked to see, I said. Would you like to sit down? He paced. They suspended me pending review. Do you know what that means? He didn't wait for an answer. It means no client meetings, no commissions. My boss thinks I lied. Thanks to you. You did lie, I said. To me. About where you were. About what mattered. He threw his hands up. How long are you going to punish me for one mistake? How long are you going to shrink my pain to fit your day? I asked. He stared at me then, hard. You're not easy, he said. An easy wife would have understood. An easy wife would not have sent an email. I am not easy, I said. I am faithful. I am organized. I am kind. I am not easy to deceive. Those are different categories. He looked at the key card on the dresser in the hall, which he had not noticed until the light caught it. What is that? He asked, voice tight. What is it? I asked. You tell me. He went pale, then flushed. You don't have proof, he said, which is the thing people say when they hope the proof is only in the other person's mind. Proof and truth live in the same house, I said. I don't need both to decide my next step. He took a step toward me, then stopped, as if he had reached a cliff not on any map. What do you want? He asked finally, and it was a real question, not a defense. I want accountability, I said. I want honesty. I want you to say the sentence out loud. I chose a beach date over my wife's surgery. Then I want to hear what kind of man says that and what he will do next. He swallowed. The pause stretched between us like a wire fence. He could step over it or walk away. He put his hand on the back of a chair. I chose a work event, he said weakly. I shook my head. No, I said. Say it as it was. His jaw worked. His eyes slid sideways as if he was reading a cue card only he could see. Finally, he said it, like someone choking down medicine. I chose a beach date, he said, barely above a whisper. Over your surgery. The room did not change temperature, the walls did not crack, but something in me that had been braced against weather finally unclenched. Thank you, I said. Now we can talk about what comes next. He sat. I sat. I spoke first because I had spent the day not speaking. For the next 2 weeks, you will sleep in the guest room, I said. You will not touch me. You will not touch my phone or my binder. If you are asked a question by HR, you will answer it truthfully. You will schedule couples counseling if you want this marriage to continue. You will not contact the woman from the beach. You will write an apology to my surgeon's office because they held a slot for you at the family waiting area. He stared at me like I had switched languages. You're giving me homework? He said. I'm giving you a path, I said. You can take it or not. But if you don't, I will take mine. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Okay, he said, grudgingly. I'll do it. He stood and walked to the guest room with the posture of a man who isn't sure whether he has been punished or saved. I listened to drawers open and shut. I took my pills and set an alarm for the next dose. I locked my phone and placed it under my pillow, stupidly, like a child with a secret. The following day, he went to the office again, leaving early, shoulders braced. I spent the morning with tea and a hot pack. In the afternoon, I opened a private email account I created back when my mother was sick, for messages about things too heavy for the regular inbox. I wrote myself a letter. "You didn't imagine it," I wrote. "You were there for you when he wasn't. You are not alone." At 4:22 p.m., a message pinged from Maya. Subject: follow-up. The body was short. "Thank you again for your cooperation," it read. "We have completed our initial review. Daniel will be reassigned to a non-client-facing role pending further training and probation. We are instituting new guidelines for event attendants that require written spousal consent for medical conflicts. Wishing you a continued recovery." I stared. Written spousal consent for medical conflicts. It was a small policy, a thin line of ink, but it meant someone else might not sit in a plastic chair counting ceiling tiles while their person shopped for a sun hat. I forwarded the email to my private account and then, on impulse, to the general mailbox of my clinic with a note, "Policy idea you may like," along with an offer to help draft something similar. Then I put my phone down and cried in a soft, private way that felt like rinsing, not drowning. Daniel came home late again. He looked wrung out. He stood in the doorway of the living room holding a paper bag. "I brought soup," he said, "and I scheduled counseling for Tuesday. I emailed your surgeon's assistant and apologized. HR put me on probation. They moved me off the account." "Okay," I said. Something in his voice had shifted. Maybe the wind changed. Maybe the cliff got closer. "I also," he said, swallowing, "emailed her to say we're done. I blocked her number. You can see." "I don't want to see," I said. "I want to observe." He nodded. He set the soup on the counter and left it, as if approaching might spook me. He disappeared into the guest room. I heard the shower. The house smelled briefly like citrus body wash and resignation. That night, sleep came in small pieces, but I stitched them together. At 3:03 a.m., I woke to a soft blue light from under the guest room door, the murmur of his voice. I stood in the hall and listened to one side of a conversation. He said, "I can't. I can't." And, "No, that isn't the point." And finally, "It isn't about her. It's about me." I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling with the calm, cold certainty that this was not over, not yet, and that my plan had another page I had not turned. Morning brought a measure of normal. Coffee, toast, my follow-up appointment on the calendar 10 days away. Daniel left in his probation shirt, plain and unbranded. He did not kiss my forehead. He thanked me for the soup as if we were co-workers sharing a break room. I watched him go and felt not nothing, but not the old thing. At noon, a package arrived addressed to him. The return label was the resort's gift shop. I signed and set it on the entry table. I did not snoop. I waited. He came home at 6 and eyed the box as if it might shout. He opened it with a key. Inside was a canvas tote with the resort logo, a folded white wrap dress with a stain on the hem, and a note that said, "Forgot this. Thanks for the day." See, my stomach did a neat, controlled lurch. He stood frozen, head bent over the box like a man at a strange altar. "Return to sender," I said gently. He looked up at me with something like shame. "I'll throw it out," he said. "No," I said. "Return it, with a note that says, 'I am married. Respect my boundaries.' If you can't write those words, then we aren't rebuilding anything. We're wallpapering mold." He did it, that night. in big block letters. He handed me the note to read, and for the first time since the hospital bracelet clicked, I believed he might be capable of standing in a room without a story to hide behind. He resealed the box and set it by the door for morning. We were not fixed. We were not even mending. We were paused between wreckage and repair, a place with thin air. But I had my binder. I had my list. I had 10 days to heal. I had a new policy in an office that would outlive my marriage if it came to that. 2 days later, in the late afternoon, my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. Elena? It's C. I did not answer. 30 seconds later, another. You humiliated him. Then, he said you're controlling. Then, a photo of 2 feet on a sunbed. His watch on a thin wrist that wasn't mine. Finally, he'll come back when he's done resenting you. It is one thing to gather your own proof. It is another to have someone mail you the blade. I sat very still so I would not shake. Then I screenshotted the messages, saved them to a new folder called Boundary, and blocked the number. I printed them, slid them into a plastic sleeve, and placed them under the If Needed tab. Then I made tea because tea is what British television detectives drink before catching a killer, and because I am not a British detective, but I know the ritual helps. When Daniel came home, I did not mention the messages. I watched him hang his keys, open the fridge, take out last night's container. He asked how I felt, and I said, better, because I did, and because the truth did not require extra decoration. He asked if I wanted to watch a show, and I said, let's talk instead. He looked wary. I said, we need a rule. What rule? He asked, and his voice wobbled like a new bridge. If either of us receives a message from someone who threatens our peace, I said, we bring it to the other. No secrets, no late-night replies, no side channels. We face it together, or we face it apart. He nodded. Agreed, he said. Do you have something to show me? Yes, I said, and laid the printed messages on the table. He read them. His face moved through surprise, anger, embarrassment, down to something softer that looked like grief. I didn't know she had your number, he said, voice dull. You gave it to her once, I said. You called her 6 times the morning of my surgery. He closed his eyes. I'm sorry, he said, and the words finally sounded like a clean shirt, not one pulled from the hamper. I have been selfish. I have been careless. I have been a man who wants applause more than he wants to keep his promises. He opened his eyes. I don't want to be that man. I believed him a little, and a little is not a contract, but it is sometimes the corner of a page you can turn. I nodded. Then don't be, I said. Choose different today. We ate in the small quiet that lives on the far side of big noise. After dishes, he went to the guest room. I sat with my binder open and a pen in my hand and looked at the exit folder and the boundary sleeve and the health tab. I realized that whatever happened, I had not abandoned myself. That realization felt like someone steadying a ladder with both hands so I could climb. The next morning, he went to counseling alone, the first of his own sessions before the couple's appointment. He sent a text at 9:57 a.m., talking about my dad. I did not know how to hold that yet, so I didn't. I made a list of groceries. I changed the ice pack. I watched a show where a woman in a gray blazer took apart men with bad alibis and thought, maybe there should be a day in school where every boy learns to feel the weight of a promise. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. Another package, this time addressed to me. No return label. I opened it. Inside was a printed photo. Daniel on the boardwalk, plastic cup lifted, the woman in white. Someone had scrawled across the bottom in marker, he'll always choose the sun. I held it at arm's length, like an artifact from a fire. Then I slid it into the boundary sleeve and added a new sticky note in red. harassment, outside contact. I poured myself a glass of water because what else do you drink when you refuse to swallow poison? When Daniel came home, I set the photo on the table before he could set his keys down. He looked at it, then at me. "This is insane," he said. "She's out of control." "I agree," I said, "so we make a police report. Not dramatic, just documenting. If she escalates, we have a record." He stared at me as if weighing whether involving the law meant his failure had spread. "Okay," he said. "Let's go." We drove to the precinct in silence. The desk officer was bored until he wasn't. We filed a report, gave our phones, showed the messages, the photo. The officer said, "We'll keep it on file. If she shows up at your house or work, call us." Back home, Daniel leaned on the counter and looked at the window like answers might walk up the driveway. "I want to fix this," he said. "Not just the mess. Me." "I know," I said. "I can tell the difference between a man who is sorry he got caught and a man who is sorry he did the thing. I am waiting to see which one you are tomorrow and the next day and the next." The doorbell rang again. June, holding a plant with a cheerful nursery tag that said, "Peace Lily, Low Light." She set it on the counter and patted the soil. "You water when the leaves droop," she said. "They'll tell you exactly what they need." "I like plants that ask directly," I said, and smiled for the first time in days. A small, true thing. That night, I slept. Deeply. Without dreams. The kind of sleep that puts coins back in your pocket. In the morning, I woke and felt the outline of my life. A house that was mine before it was ours. A job where I could make policies that helped the next woman who sat where I had sat. A neighbor who knew the language of casseroles and calm. And a husband in a guest room trying to decide who he wanted to be without an audience. At 7:32 a.m., the email arrived from HR. Final determination meeting set for Thursday. Daniel and manager to attend. At 7:34 a.m., an email from Maya to me. "We're adding medical absence respect to our event code of conduct. Your email started this conversation. Thank you." At 7:35 a.m., a text from Daniel. "I want you there Thursday." At 7:36 a.m., another. "If you're willing." I stared at the words. The woman who trained me at the clinic once said, "Presence is power." She meant for our patients. She meant for us. I did not know yet if I would go. But I knew that the next part of this story would not be written without me in the room, stone steady, binder backed, ready to say the sentence that still tasted like iodine, but healed like clean water. I was there. He was not. Here are the times. Thursday came like a test you know you studied for but still feel in your knees. I woke before my alarm and made coffee, then switched to tea, because coffee jittered my healing body. I put on a simple navy dress and flats I could walk in. I slid my binder into a tote with a pack of tissues, a pen, and a small bottle of water. The house was quiet except for the small hum of the refrigerator and the click of the ceiling fan chain when the air stirred. Daniel stood in the kitchen in a white shirt and a tie that looked unused, like hope. He had shaved. His hair was neat. He had the face he wears to funerals and first days. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice low. "I'm here," I said. "Not for a performance. For the truth." He nodded, eyes on the counter. "I know." We drove to his office in a silence that had words on deck if either of us asked for them. The building was the kind that looked like it always had air conditioning and confidence. The lobby smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and new carpet. At the reception desk, a woman in a gray blazer tapped our names and printed visitor stickers. She placed them on the counter like small surrender flags. "Conference room B," she said. "Down the hall." Inside the room, a glass wall faced a view of other glass walls. A pitcher of water sat untouched. Maya from HR was there, and Paul from compliance, and Daniel's boss, who had a jaw that could cut rope. A woman I didn't know sat to the side with a legal pad and a pen that clicked softly. "Thank you for coming," Maya said. Her voice held no blame. It was the voice of a person who had walked this distance before. She gestured to chairs. We sat. Daniel's boss folded his hands, knuckles pale. "This is a fact-finding conversation and a final determination," Maya said. "We've completed our review. Before we share our decision, we want to make sure we have everything correct." Paul read from a paper. On Friday at 11:45 a.m., Elena had a scheduled surgery. Daniel signed as escort and emergency contact. On that same day between 11:30 a.m. and 2 p.m., Daniel attended an event at Shoreline Resort with a client. Social posts and third-party tags confirm his presence. "Daniel, do you dispute this timeline?" Daniel looked at me, then at the table. "No," he said. "It's true." "Do you dispute that you were asked and agreed to be present for Elena's surgery?" Paul asked. "No," Daniel said. His voice was steady. "I agreed. I wasn't there." Maya nodded once, a quiet acknowledgement that truth had been set on the table. "Daniel, we've also received communications from another individual, which we will address separately," she said. "For the purposes of today, our focus is on your role, choices, and conduct within company policy." Daniel's boss spoke for the first time. "This isn't about your marriage," he said, and glanced at me with a careful respect. "This is about our client code, our event conduct, and the way you represented us while your name was on a form as someone's medical support. We send people to events to build relationships, not to abandon their responsibilities. We can't have both." Daniel swallowed. "I understand," he said. Maya looked at me. "Elena, we are grateful you notified us," she said. "Do you want to add anything before we share our decision?" I placed my hand on the tote but didn't pull out the binder. "Just this," I said. "I didn't write to ruin him. I wrote because the truth works best in daylight. What you choose to do is your choice. My life will go on, but I won't sit in a room again where a promise is treated like a soft suggestion." Maya's eyes softened. "Thank you," she said. She turned to Daniel. "Our decision," she said, and the room squared itself around her words. "Effective immediately, you are removed from client-facing duties for 12 months. You are placed on probation for 6 months with no commission eligibility during that period. You will complete mandatory ethics and boundary training before any role changes are considered. Any event attendance requires prior written approval from your manager, and any attendance during a spouse's scheduled medical procedure is prohibited without documented spousal consent. Any violation will result in termination." Daniel closed his eyes, just once, like a door catching a draft. "Understood," he said. His boss added, "You'll keep your base salary. You'll be assigned to internal projects. If you show up and do the work, we'll reassess." I listened for spite and didn't hear it. It sounded like the consequence that fit the choice. It sounded like a chance. Maya looked at me again. "We also prepared a resource list," she said quietly, sliding an envelope toward me, "for spouses and partners navigating medical procedures with limited support. It's not much, but if you're open, we'd welcome input on how to make it better." I nodded. "I'll help," I said, and meant it. If hurt had to be useful, let it be useful. The meeting moved to signatures and dates, the choreography of decisions. When it ended, I stood, and the floor didn't tilt. We walked out together. In the lobby, Daniel paused by a planter with a plant that looked both lush and plastic. "Thank you," he said, "for speaking, for not burning me down." "I didn't come to save you," I said. "I came to see." He nodded. "I know." We stepped into the daylight. The sky was bright and clean, a day that had no idea what we had done under it. In the car, Daniel stared at his hands and said, "I made a list." The counselor had me write what I do when I don't want to feel: drinks, jokes, flirt, run. I'm supposed to pick one and stop. So I'm stopping too. Drinks and flirt. Good, I said. Add lie. He huffed a sad laugh. Add lie, he said. At home, I made tea. He opened his laptop and read the training email he'd been sent. He answered a few messages with words like, "I understand," and "I accept." He did not tell anyone I overreacted. He did not ask me to retract. He did not draft a story where he was the hero. That was new. The next days unfolded like a slow walk across a long bridge. He woke early, ran without posting his mileage, came back quiet. He made breakfast without banging pans. He said, "Do you need anything?" and sometimes brought the thing before I answered. He didn't touch me without asking. He didn't fill silences with apologies that begged for comfort. He did the small chores he had ignored before: scrubbing the pan, wiping the stove, cleaning the sink drain, and each felt like a sentence finished, not a gift delivered. I also did my part. I answered the counselor's intake form for our couples session with clean sentences. I wrote the bad and the good. I did not pad. I did not sharpen. I showed up at my clinic and shared the policy draft Maya sent, marking the parts that needed plainer language and the places where support should be specific. We adapted it. We posted it on our staff board with a note: "Ask your patients who their ride-home person is. Look them in the eyes when they answer." C did not stop. She changed tactics. She posted a vague rant about controlling wives on a private account I didn't follow, but a friend did. She sent a message to my clinic's general inbox calling me names that sounded like fruit rotting in the mouth. She left a voicemail on our landline when Daniel didn't answer. Tears laid on so thick you could slide on them. We added each piece to the police report. We did not reply. After the second voicemail, the officer we'd met called her and warned her. Then the garden went quiet. Sometimes silence is peace. Sometimes it is only a pause. I learned to water the peace lily when the leaves drooped and let that be enough for the day. A week after the HR meeting, the couples counselor's office was small and warm, with a rug that looked like ocean waves paused mid-curl. The counselor, a woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled back in a threadbare scrunchie, asked us to tell the story of Friday in 2 sentences each. I asked for support, I said, and the person who promised to give it to me chose a beach date instead. I told the truth to the people whose rooms he values most, then told it again to him. And I am waiting to see who he will be when the rooms are quiet. I made a stupid, selfish decision, Daniel said. I wanted to be the guy everyone liked. I thought I could do both. I lied to myself and Elena. I'm sorry, and I am trying to be a person who keeps his word even when no one claps. The counselor nodded. That's your starting place, she said. Now we work on boundaries and repair. Not as punishment, as a practice. She gave us homework. Weekly check-ins with 3 questions and no rebuttals. What did I do this week that built trust? What did I do this week that chipped it? What do I need this week to feel safe? We did it at the kitchen table every Sunday with tea. He said, I kept my phone face up. I answered everything truthfully. I went to training, I said. You left at 10 p.m. on Tuesday with no warning. That chipped it. I need you to tell me before you leave and tell me when you'll be back. He said, I hear you. And he proved it the next night, not with a speech, but with a text at 6:02 p.m. Running late, home by 7:15, followed by arriving at 7:12. Trust didn't return like a switch being flipped. It returned like a tide that came in and out until you realized the shoreline had moved. Some days I felt a small softness toward him when he took out the trash without sighing. Other days, the image of him with a plastic cup and a paper umbrella would float up like a leaf in a glass of water and stick to the side. He didn't ask me to hurry. I didn't ask him to beg. 2 weeks after my surgery, my follow-up appointment arrived. June drove me to the clinic. The air smelled like antiseptic and hope. The doctor said the healing looked good. Pain would fade. Energy would return. She asked about support. I told her my neighbor had been a boat in a storm. She smiled and said every neighborhood should have a June. We stopped for ice cream on the way home, and I ate it slowly, a small ceremony of sweetness after salt. At home, an envelope sat on the table. Daniel had left it there with a sticky note. For review. Inside was a draft of a post-nuptial agreement. Not a trap. Not a power play. A document that said, in simple terms, what was mine before remained mine. What we built together would be split fairly. And if infidelity occurred, I could choose the house without a fight. He had signed his name, then left the second line blank for me to sign if I wanted to. It was not romance. It was respect in ink. I called my own lawyer. Yes, I have one, because binders contain numbers and lawyers hold lines, and she read it. She suggested 2 edits. He accepted them. We signed at the kitchen table with June as a witness. The pen felt heavier and also kinder. My hand didn't shake. The police followed up once more. They served C with a written warning. She posted about crazy women and their binders. Then her account went dark, and her messages stopped. I did not miss them. The quiet that followed was not a pause. It was the sound of a door closing. Work was a steady rhythm that reminded me I had more than a marriage. I sat with patients who waited on plastic chairs with brave faces. I asked them, "Who is your ride home?" I looked them in the eyes when they answered. We added a checkbox in our charting. Ride home confirmed by phone? We refused to sedate until the box was checked. When someone's person flaked, a volunteer named Rita with a pixie cut and a fierce heart showed up. The world wasn't fixed, but our corner had rules now. One evening, I opened my email and found a note from Maya. "We implemented the event guideline," she wrote. "We also added a training module on balancing professional demands with personal commitments. We used your sentence. Promises are not soft suggestions," as an opener. "We didn't credit you by name, unless you want it." I wrote back, "No credit needed. The work is enough." Then I closed my laptop and let my shoulders drop because some fights end not with a cheer, but with a paper trail that protects people you will never meet. The next Sunday check-in, Daniel said, "I told my mom what happened. I braced for the old pattern. His mother, all pity for him and knives for me." He looked at his hands. "She said my dad missed her gallbladder surgery for a poker night once," he said. "I didn't know." She cried. "She told me to be different from him." "Do you want to be?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "I'm making a list." "Good," I said. "Make it long." A month passed. He stayed in the guest room, not as punishment but as space where both of us could put on new skin without brushing against the other's raw. We had dinners at the counter sometimes, and other times we ate separately. We laughed once at a dumb commercial where a man tried to sell sunglasses to a dog. It sounded like a sound we used to make, but it wasn't nostalgia. It was relief. One night he asked, "When can I move back into our room?" He asked it the way you ask the ocean when it will stop moving. I said, "Not yet," and he nodded. He didn't push. The next week, I said, "We'll try weekends," and he nodded again. On Saturday, he slept like a man afraid to breathe too loudly. On Sunday, he made pancakes that didn't taste like apology. You can tell the difference if you pay attention. People want a clean resolution. They want the bow. They want, "He was punished and became perfect," or She left and found someone new with better wrists and no shadow on his calendar. My life is smaller and more honest than that. We are not a movie. We are two people with a plant that droops when thirsty and brightens when watered, and every morning we check the leaves. The twist came not from him or her or HR. It came from June, in the best possible way. She knocked one afternoon with a flyer in hand. "Community Council is forming a patient support network," she said, eyes bright. "They need a coordinator. Someone to build schedules, call volunteers, write simple scripts for how to sit with people before and after procedures." I told them I knew the woman for the job. I took the flyer. The title read, "Care Ride Network. No one goes alone." I read the description. I felt the old part of me, the part that loves order for the way it can hold a life, reach for it. "Yes," I said. "I'll do it." I drafted intake questions and training sheets. I built a calendar that fit around my work. We recruited 6 volunteers in the first week, 12 by the third. We made a laminated card for patients with a simple list: breathe, ask for water, you're not a bother. We kept a stack of blankets in a bin by the door, washed and ready. It wasn't heroic. It was precise compassion. It steadied me like a hand on a ladder. One evening, months later, Daniel and I walked around the block at dusk. The crepe myrtles shed their pink tissue blossoms like confetti from a quiet parade. He pointed at a house with a porch swing and said, "They stained it the color you like." I nodded. He took a breath. "I want to say something without asking for a reply," he said. "You don't owe me one." "Okay," I said. "I am not proud of who I was that day," he said. "I am proud of who I was in that conference room." I told the truth. I accepted the consequences. I am trying to make that my new normal. If you choose to keep walking beside me, I will keep my promises without needing a witness. If you choose to walk your own way, I will sign what needs to be signed, and I will not make you carry my shame. We passed the neighbors' hedges. The air smelled like cut grass and someone's cinnamon cookies cooling on a rack. I did not answer, not because I had no words, but because sometimes love isn't a rush, but a measure. I reached over and touched his sleeve. It was the lightest consent, the smallest vote. He didn't grab for more. He walked steady. 6 months after the beach, HR lifted his probation. He kept the internal role by choice for a while. He turned down 2 events. He helped build an ethics module and put his name under a section that said, "When your life and your job collide." He came home at decent hours and did not turn it into a performance. He asked before touching my waist in the kitchen and accepted, "Not today," without injury. We moved slow. We still move slow. My binder has a new tab now. It is labeled Care Ride Network. It holds volunteer schedules, donation receipts, and handwritten notes from patients that say things like, "I was afraid." Rita held my hand. There is a photo tucked into the sleeve, too. It's Maya standing with our clinic director in front of a poster that says, "Promises are not suggestions." I smile every time I see it. Not because it makes me a hero, but because it looks like a room where the truth breathes. Sometimes I take out the photo of Daniel on the boardwalk and look at it like an artifact. It no longer makes my stomach drop. It makes my shoulders square. It reminds me of the day I refused to be alone with pain. I keep it not to hurt myself, but to measure distance traveled. People ask me now, when I tell a thin version of what happened, "Would you do it again? Would you send the email?" I say yes. I say it without drama. It is not revenge the way films paint revenge. It is accountability. It is the moment the room gets bright and the air clears, and everyone can see what is on the table. Our marriage didn't return to what it was. It went somewhere new. There is a space where trust once stood like a wall, now open like a window. We have rules written in everyday words. Say where you are. Be where you say. If you can't, say why. Ask for help. Show your phone without flinching. Do your share without being asked. Don't flirt with pain. If you hurt each other, say the sentence, name the thing, and make it right. They are not romantic. They are practical. They are the soft knit of a sweater you reach for in cold weather. On the anniversary of my surgery, June brought a cake with a single sparkler instead of candles. To the day we learned something, she said. We cut slices and ate on the porch. The sunset threw gold on the power lines. Daniel handed me a small box. Inside was a keychain with a tiny enamel binder on it, tabs painted in colors. It would have been corny months ago. Now it was an acknowledgement, simple and clean. I see you, he said. I see how you keep us steady. I see you trying, I said. Keep trying. The twist, if you want one more, arrived later in the mail, not from C, not from HR, but from a woman I didn't know. The envelope held a handwritten note. I was scheduled for a biopsy last week. My husband's job tried to send him out of town. He told them about the new policy because he's at your husband's company. They let him stay. He held my hand. It helped. Thank you for sending that email. I put the note in the Care Ride Network tab, under a clear sleeve where sunlight could reach it. Some stories end with a door slamming or a hotel desk bell dinging. Mine ends with a binder on a kitchen table, a plant with drooping leaves that perk up when watered, and two people who learn to count minutes and keep them. It ends with a line in a policy manual and a volunteer in a waiting room, and a woman in a quiet chair who does not look at the ceiling tiles anymore because someone is there, and the phone is face up, and the promise is a promise, not a suggestion. When I tell it to you now, I start where it hurts, so we can arrive where it helps. I tell you I was humiliated and I took action, not to destroy, but to define. I tell you that the email wasn't the end. It was the first page of a new chapter with rules that held. I tell you that love is not always a second sunrise. Sometimes it is a lamp you turn on and on again until the room remembers your shape. And I tell you, most of all, that I did not leave myself on a hospital gurney to be wheeled away without a witness. I wheeled myself back into my own life, one measured push at a time, and the door I shut behind me was not on a marriage or an event, or a person with a paper umbrella. It was on the version of me that was willing to call abandonment a misunderstanding. That door locks from my side now. We keep walking. We keep lists. We check the leaves. We speak the sentence when needed. We water the plant when it droops. And once in a while, on a Friday, he brings home soup and sets it on a coaster. And I hold the warm bowl and think of the nurse who squeezed my shoulder and said, "You're brave." And I think, no, I'm meticulous. But if bravery and meticulousness ride in the same car, then maybe that is what got us home.